Today, I am going to be ranking every single Nintendo Switch game I have ever played. And despite only making YouTube videos for the last year or so about the Switch, I've actually owned it since a couple of months after launch. So it's safe to say I've played quite a few games. Now, just for a bit of backstory before we get into it, in my early years of playing on the Switch, I mostly only dabbled in the AAA and first-party Switch games. But in the last year or so, I've really found my love for indie games. So that's why this list is mostly AAA games, with the dabbling of indie games that I got into recently. And if you want to see more Nintendo Switch content, make sure you subscribe down below. I put out videos every week of all things new and cozy on the Nintendo Switch. Now, the ranking system is pretty self-explanatory. We have S tier at the top. These are games that I think are not only more than worth your money, they're also games that I think are just utterly fantastic. And it goes without saying, if I put a game in S tier, I wholeheartedly recommend that you play it. And then we go all the way down to D tier at the bottom. These are games that I personally didn't have fun with, or games that I don't really feel warrant the price tag, aka games that are just horrifically overpriced and not that much fun. Now, this isn't to say that if you like these games that you are wrong. Everyone's different, and honestly, I'm just glad you didn't waste your money. We're gonna start off with an easy one first, and that is Animal Crossing New Horizons. It's going straight into S tier. It's safe to say, as someone with, I think, nearly 2,000 hours in Animal Crossing, I got my money's worth. For me, Animal Crossing came out at the perfect time. It came out during the beginning of the pandemic, I think, at a time where I couldn't go outside, I couldn't see my friends, and instead I got to live this cute, idyllic life in a game instead. I could chat to the villagers, I could go out and do whatever I wanted, and the game was just a pure joy to play. Especially in the early days, the Animal Crossing community was just booming. Is it a perfect game? No. I think they wasted a huge amount of potential. They could have done so much more with the game, and a part of me just wishes it was a bit less decorating focused and a bit more life sim focused. But despite all of that, I can probably say this is one of, if not the best life sim out there. There is no other game that does seasonal events the way Animal Crossing did. And there's no other game that gave me the same feeling that Animal Crossing still does whenever I play it. Next is another easy one. Fire Emblem Three Houses. It's going straight into S tier. This is, again, one of my favorite games on the Nintendo Switch. Full stop. There are few games that compare to it in terms of its storytelling. The story is absolutely fantastic. And there's like 4 different endings, so you can play the game multiple times through to get each and every ending. If you're unfamiliar with Fire Emblem Three Houses, it's basically a tactical turn-based RPG. And to be truthful, it was my first ever game of this genre. So I was a little bit nervous going into it because I don't consider myself good at those types of games. But it turns out that didn't really matter. I played it in the normal mode and I was absolutely fine. But where the game shines for me is the story and each and every character you get to meet. Many times throughout my playthrough did I have to pause the game, put it down, and ponder over which decision I wanted to make. The game itself is almost entirely voice acted, and not only do you get the beautiful cutscenes and the incredible story to go along with it, you also get to run around the school and speak to the students and spend some time with them. And I think it struck a really nice balance between the battling, the storytelling, and also the running around doing whatever you want around the school. And the nice thing is the game has a few settings making it easier for newer players. So if you're not too into tactical RPGs, but you really want to play the story, I definitely recommend it. It was my first one and I had an okay time, so I'm sure other people will be fine with it as well. That brings me on to the next game, Fire Emblem Warriors. I wanted to love this game. I did not love this game. To be frank, I'm not a huge fan of the warrior type game format. At first, I enjoy the button mashing and all the cool things that come with it, but after a while, I kind of get bored of the format and it feels a little bit repetitive. The main reason I picked up this game was I wanted to see my favorite characters all over again. But for me, the payoff of story versus the battling just wasn't enough, and it didn't have the spark that Fire Emblem Three Houses had. So is it a bad game? No, it was very well done and the cutscenes were still great. It just wasn't my cup of tea, so I'm going to put it in C tier. For similar reasons, I'm also going to put Hyrule Warriors into the C tier. Let's tackle one game I definitely think does deserve to be in D tier, and that's Mario Strikers. I'm sorry, you can say you enjoyed the gameplay however much you want. I found the game boring. I thought the price was a bit of a rip-off, and I genuinely have not played it since release day. I have had not a single inkling or urge to pick it up whatsoever. And that really surprises me because we've literally just had Christmas, and the original Mario Strikers that I played on the Wii was a staple at Christmas for me and my brother. But neither of us wanted to pick this up whatsoever. I think they tried to make a game that was viable for like esports, right? They tried to make a football game that had all the old stuff that Mario Strikers had in it, but a game that was more balanced and more fair. And I think in doing that, they kind of lost the magic of Mario Strikers. I don't know if this is a controversial take, but I'm also going to put Pokemon Snap in C tier. Visually, this is by far the best Pokemon game. The game itself looks stunning. I just wasn't a big fan of the gameplay. If you're unfamiliar, Pokemon Snap is a Pokemon game, but it's not like a typical Pokemon game. It's kind of a spin-off. And basically, you just sit on this little cart as it rolls around each level, allowing you to take pictures of different Pokemon. At first, I thought the game was fantastic. It was so cool seeing Pokemon move around like realistically. It was awesome to see them interacting with each other, interacting to you, and the environments and the courses themselves were stunning. I just got bored really quickly from the game. But if you do like the look of the game and you can find it on offer for around 30 quid or less, then I think it might be worthwhile. Speaking of Pokemon, let's do Pokemon Shield. This is really hard. I think I'm going to put it in B tier. And that's for one reason, the story. The actual gameplay itself, I had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed shiny hunting in the game. I think the DLCs were also pretty good. I actually think I had more fun playing the DLC stories than I did the main story itself. But the big thing that let this game down was not the trees. I know a lot of people had things against the trees, but it was the main story. I felt like every time in the Pokemon story something cool was happening, you were literally told not to worry about it and go and continue to do your little gym journey and have fun. So despite the fact that you then go on to become the strongest trainer there ever was, you didn't really do a lot to help. You just kind of watched on the sidelines right until the end. We're going to fly through a few games I have talked about a lot on this channel. First up is Beacon Pines. This is probably the best indie game I have ever played. I love it so much. It's a game where you play as both the main character and the narrator. You get to insert words in certain key moments in the story to control which branch you go down. And although the story is quite dark, you don't see anything gruesome or gory. Things just fade to black as the narrator reads over it. It's such a cool style of game, and I loved playing every single moment of it. And everyone I've suggested this game to has said they thoroughly enjoy it. So I definitely recommend, and if you could pick it up on sale, even better. Our first A-tier game of the day is Switch Sports. I will say it's not as fun as Wii Sports. I don't know if it's because I'm older or that the game just has lost some of its magic, but it definitely is one of the best games to play with your friends and family when you have them over. I do really love the sports they put into the game. I think volleyball was such a cool addition that has to be one of my favorites along with the badminton. And I love the fact that although they did try and put an element of skill into each of these, like the Joy-Cons are much more sensitive than the Wii controller ever was, they're still pretty accessible, and I think family accessible games like this is Nintendo's strong point. I'm also going to put Cult of the Lamb in A tier as well. It was a little buggy at first on the Nintendo Switch, but for the most part, they seem to have ironed all that out. And it truly is a great game to get new people into dungeon crawlers. If you're unaware of Cult of the Lamb, it is part dungeon crawler, part cult manager. For you are trying to make the ultimate cult. And to do this, you must go out and find new followers and destroy any non-believers in your path. And despite the very dark undertones, this game is adorable. It makes no sense, but I love it. For me personally, it was the cult sim management that I enjoyed the most. Now I put it in A tier because the dungeon crawling part, whilst fun at first, was definitely my least favorite part of the game. And that's not only because they got long and very hard at the end, but also because when your cult started to grow in size, every time you went to do the dungeon crawling part to gather resources and new followers, your cult literally fell into disarray. And that to me eventually got a little bit frustrating. Another fantastic indie game, one I won't spend very long on, Ooblets. It is cute, it is charming, it is so much fun to play, and they do incredible events each season that makes me keep on coming back to the game. It's basically a more ethical Pokemon with some farming sim elements thrown in. And again, it's one of those games that you can pick up for 2 minutes, 2 hours, 20 hours, and just have a really fantastic time playing. Flying through a few other indies, we have Lemon Cake. This is basically a game where you manage your own bakery, and whilst it was very cute and a lot of fun to play, it hasn't come down in price whatsoever, really, like only by a few pounds, and I think it's wildly overpriced. The game itself is actually pretty short, and once you finish doing all the upgrades to your bakery, there really isn't much left to do. I'm actually going to put Cat Cafe Manager also in C tier. I had a lot of fun playing it. It's something I play late at night before I go to bed, as it's just really easy and really chill for a management style game. But again, it's not incredibly long, but it is a lot of fun. I'm gonna get a little bit controversial with this one. We're talking about Smash Bros. I wasn't a huge fan. There's only one occasion I ever pick up this game, and that's when I'm with a bunch of friends hanging out playing on the Switch. That's the only time I find it fun anymore. So I'm gonna put it in C tier. It's not a bad game. It's just not my style of game. And actually, when I was trying to get somewhat good at this game, I ended up getting carpal tunnel in my thumb. Yeah, it's pretty tragic. While we're going for controversial takes, I'm putting Super Mario Odyssey in B tier. I think Mario is wildly overrated, and I don't fully understand the hype around the game. Now, don't get me wrong, the game itself is stunning. I just got bored really fast, and I can't fully explain why. I'm not really much of a completionist, so I don't really get anything from needing to get all the moons in each level, so I never found myself replaying it for that reason. And yeah, I felt like each level just became more of the same, and man, I really don't like underwater levels. So I get it, it's a good game, it's just not for me. I didn't really have fun with it, and I personally don't think it's anywhere near as good as the very similar game of Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which I'm gonna put in A tier. I don't think it's quite S tier, and that's mainly because, as I said, a big part of these types of games is the completionist side, which I don't really do. But to me, this had far more charm. I was way more invested in the story that it was building, and there was just way more to do. Kirby not only had all the levels you could do, it also had the speedrun levels in which you had a timer to beat. And then in addition to this, you also had the town itself. The levels themselves in Kirby were so enjoyable. I feel like the copying abilities were just so much fun. I even just loved the standard ones, as you could go off and you could upgrade each and every one of them to make them cooler and more effective. But I also absolutely loved mouthful mode. Not only was it hilarious, but some of the uses of each of the mouthful modes was so heckin' creative. Hats off to the developers. I loved it. The town itself was also so much fun. You had a gacha game which you could play, which I loved because it didn't actually cost real life money, so I could have fun with it. There were also a whole host of mini games that you could not only play with yourself, but also with a friend. And the town itself could be upgraded as you progressed through each and every one of the many worlds that are in the game. My main criticism with Kirby, it just wasn't long enough. Another game going in A tier, and I feel like I'm going to surprise a few of you with this game, is Diablo 3. I actually have hundreds of hours in it because it is so much fun. This is a hack and slash RPG. And definitely not my normal style of game, but once I got into it, I could not stop. I think the thing that kept me bringing me back for more was they have this thing called seasons, and each season you start a new character, build it up from scratch, and then use all the cool additions in each season to make a really overpowered build and have fun making progress that way. And there was something so Moorish with making each and every build. It would require quite a lot of grinding for you to get to the top level, and then even more grinding to find each and every item you needed to make your build. But because you didn't really have to think too hard about what you were doing, I really enjoyed it and found it pretty calming. And I just love playing it with friends. When I had a group of 4 of us playing all together, it was so much fun, and it runs phenomenally well on the Switch. I don't think I saw many frame drops even in handheld whatsoever. Now, if you've been watching my channel, the next game is no surprise whatsoever. Xenoblade Chronicles 3. S tier. Easily one of the best games I've played on the Nintendo Switch. Full stop. I don't think I have ever cried so much playing a game as I did in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is an RPG like no other that I've played before. And the Xenoblade series itself is truly one of the best storytelling games on the Switch. I'm fairly sure after the tutorial, I was sat through a 45-minute cutscene. It didn't feel like 45 minutes though, because it is beautifully animated. They spent a lot of time and effort making the cutscenes just feel fully cinematic. Not only was the world building incredible, so was the world. It was absolutely massive, and on a scale that I've seen few games try and match on the Switch. I fell in love with each and every one of the characters, and the music that goes along with each cutscene and how you explore the world is just breathtaking. If you are going to play a Xenoblade game, I would recommend Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I really think they took everything from the previous games and made it even better. But get your tissues ready, the story is a roller coaster. On a similar vein, we have Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I'm also going to put this in S tier. Now, whilst this is in the Xenoblade franchise, these games aren't as similar as you might think. The combat itself is incredibly different, and so is the story, but it still maintains the incredible storytelling, voice acting, and cutscenes of the Xenoblade franchise. I love the characters in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 just as much as I love them in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. They are incredibly different though, but in a really good way. And much like Xenoblade Chronicles 3, you literally stand no chance in predicting the story whatsoever. It has so many twists and turns and will take you on such an adventure. Next is Disney Dreamlight Valley. I've talked about this endlessly as well. It's going in the C tier. It is fantastic, and I've played hundreds of hours of it so far. But right now, I can't in good conscience put it in A or even S tier, purely because it is still so buggy. Next is Super Mario Party. Now, there are 2 Mario Party games on the Switch. One is fantastic, one is terrible. This is the terrible one. It's going in D tier because you shouldn't buy this. You should buy Superstars instead. The courses themselves aren't as good. The online capabilities took ages to arrive. And all in all, why would you buy this when Super Mario Superstars is incredible? You know what? It's going in S tier. This is everything the previous Mario Party game should have been. You can play online with friends, not even just on the same console, but also on different consoles. There's a huge range of maps you can choose from, each bringing unique challenges in and making each game feel unique. I feel like Mario Party really highlights the strength of Nintendo. Good, family-friendly fun. Much like Nintendo Switch Sports, it is the perfect game to play with non-gamers. A lot of it is luck-based, not a whole lot of it is skill-based, and literally anyone can win, especially if you turn on the bonus star features at the end. And I say this all the time, but if my parents can play it, then so can kids, and so can your parents. Next, we have Ring Fit Adventure. I'm going to put it in B tier. I think I kind of got consumed by the hype. I think I was just lured into buying it because it seemed like the perfect fitness solution. And I, like many people, have left it untouched for a very long time. Now, I will give it credit. It does make me sweat. It does make me ache the next day, although admittedly I am quite unfit now. And it is a very fun way to exercise. But it does require quite a lot of room, which I didn't really take into account when I first bought it. But when you compare it to something like Wii Fit, this is an actual workout. Next is Breath of the Wild. I feel like I don't have to say too much about this. I adored the game. Despite the whole weapon breaking thing being annoying, the whole rest of the game was absolutely incredible. I love the fact that even if you weren't doing the main story, you could still explore and find so many cool side quests, cool rocks, and little treasures to be found. The story itself was absolutely incredible. I would always look forward to finding one of the memories hidden around or doing one of the divine beasts so I could get another snippet of information about what the world was like before the calamity. And it's still, to this day, my favorite Zelda game and the only Zelda game to have made me cry. I love that there was a focus on the characters' relationships with one another in the cutscenes. Like, I feel like I learned more about Zelda and Link's relationship, Zelda and her dad's relationship, And I know a lot of people really miss the dungeons, but I didn't really. I actually really enjoyed the shrines. I feel like they were all set at a great difficulty level and also were insanely rewarding when you figure out the puzzles. Which brings me on to Skyward Sword. I'm going to put this as B tier. I really enjoyed the story aspects of the game, but I definitely felt the game felt aged. Like Zelda has definitely come a long way since the game originally released. The story itself is going to be vital in Breath of the Wild 2, so I think even if you don't intend on playing it yourself, it might be worth watching some of the cutscenes so you get a sort of idea of the lore behind it. Because story-wise, this is probably the most important Zelda game. It is the first Zelda game in the entire timeline. It sets up the lore for the whole franchise. But outside of the lore itself, I didn't really find the gameplay all that much enjoyable. I didn't feel like I got a good payoff for each of the puzzles when I figured them out. And I didn't find the dungeons or the puzzle solving anywhere near as fun as I found them in Breath of the Wild. Do I even need to say anything about Stardew Valley? I'm putting it in A tier. Actually, no, there is one thing I want to say about Stardew Valley. Can we stop recommending Stardew Valley to new Nintendo Switch players who said they enjoyed Animal Crossing? Animal Crossing, I regard as a very good entry-level game. Stardew Valley is a very good game. It is not an entry-level gamer's game, however. It doesn't tell you a whole lot about how to play the game, and 90% of everything you learn about the game you need to find from the wiki. And if you're new to gaming, that would be incredibly overwhelming. So yes, tell more people to play Stardew Valley. Just stop suggesting it to brand new Switch players, okay? They get so overwhelmed and it's so much to take in. Untitled Goose Game is adorable. I'm going to put it in B tier though. But if you don't know Untitled Goose Game, it's basically the most unique puzzle solving game I've ever played. It's kind of reminiscent of point and click puzzle games, but instead you control a goose and you basically use the items you find to mess with humans. The puzzles are incredible. Playing as a goose is hilarious, and the game devs did such a good job in making it a purely enjoyable experience. But if I'm going to be truthful, I was too small-brained for most of the puzzles. The only reason I got through each of the levels I got through was thanks to a walkthrough. I could not for the life of me get my brain to think in the appropriate way to make it through this game by myself. So whilst I appreciate the game for everything that it is, I struggled a lot and maybe didn't have as much fun as I could have with it. Is that a bad thing to say? Like, I'm bad at gaming, so I didn't enjoy it? No, I think I'm valid. I'm gonna say I'm valid. We won't spend too long on No Man's Sky. I've talked about it a lot. Instantly S tier. And I still stand by the fact that I called it cozy, okay? It is a cozy game. You explore space at your own leisure. You find new creatures, new plants, new rocks on each solar system you go to. All the while, you can decide on a planet to call your home and build a base, and you can even farm. One thing to bear in mind if you are playing this on the Switch though, as far as I'm aware right now, there are no online capabilities. I personally don't see that as a big downside. I play it by myself, even on the PC. But just something to bear in mind if you're wondering which platform to get it on. Octopath Traveler. It is going... I wish there was like an A+ tier. It's like halfway between S and A. Hands down, one of my favorite turn-based RPGs. The music, the art style, the characters, all incredible, and I loved it. And I've talked about it before, so I won't spend too long on it. But the main downside to the game, for me, was that the characters didn't really interact with each other. They were just kind of there to keep each other company, but weren't really involved in each other's stories. I think if Octopath Traveler 2 can manage to intertwine each of the characters' stories more, they could be on for like a Game of the Year type game. I'm going to put Mario Golf in C tier. I don't really see the point of buying this game now Switch Sports is out. There's golf in Switch Sports. Switch Sports also has loads of different games to play on top of it. So I feel like if you want to pick up Mario Golf, you might as well pick up Nintendo Switch Sports and get a ton of extras with it. Pokemon Legends Arceus is going in A tier. I had a lot of fun with that game. I didn't really find myself picking it up as much as I maybe thought I would, but every time I picked it up, I had a great time. I was a huge fan of the different catching mechanics, and I actually was really sad to not see that in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. But the main thing that let Pokemon Legends Arceus down was its story. The story itself wasn't like bad. It was just delivered in a really dry and long format. I think this game definitely could have benefited from cutscenes or even voice dialogue to help it move through a little bit more smoothly. because there was just so much reading. But shiny hunting was so much fun. It was something I could not stop doing. I think the outbreaks were a great addition to the game. And I think it's a great game to tell new players to go and play. I think it's a perfect starter Pokemon game. I'm going to move quickly through a few games I've already talked about a lot. Potions Permit is going in A tier. I feel like I'm not putting it in S tier now just because I haven't picked it up as much as I maybe should do. And I'm fairly sure they announced that there's an update coming out for it soon. But if you like cozy games but are kind of done with farming sims, I definitely recommend it. Goth Romantic is also going in A tier. It is another fantastic puzzle game and one of my favorite puzzle games at that. Wildflowers recently also came out with an update and I'm also going to put it in A tier. Then we have the Spyro trilogy. I'm going to put this in B tier. It's often on sale, so it's an incredible price. But I find that the first Spyro especially is actually surprisingly difficult to get into. I think you can really see how far gaming's come since that game. But I feel like if you don't have the nostalgia of the old Spyro games, you're maybe not going to enjoy this as much as you maybe first think you will. Then we have Splatoon 3. I need to give this another go since Christmas has been and gone. My initial problem and why I'm putting it in C tier is I just wasn't enjoying it. I don't think the matchmaking system itself is incredibly balanced, and I think that's a large part of the issue. I found myself mostly losing games, and when we lost them, we lost by a lot. So because I was losing so much, I wasn't really having that much fun, and I didn't really have a want to develop my skills or a want to get better because it was just so demoralizing. This might be better now a bunch of kids got it for Christmas, but I just didn't enjoy it as much as Splatoon 2. Then we have Doraemon Story of Seasons. This is the second one. The title's too long. I'm not going to say it. I would have put this in C tier. Whilst I did have a lot of fun when I was playing it, I shockingly didn't go back to it as much as I thought I would. So ultimately, not my favorite farming sim. But I enjoyed it a lot more than I did Story of Seasons Pioneers of Olive Town. Me and this game had problems. I know a lot of people really enjoy it. This is just my opinion. But for me personally, it felt incredibly clumsy and really slow. Now, I know farming sims aren't meant to feel high-paced, high energy, all of that. But to me, this game just went too far the other way. Every task I was doing just seemed kind of difficult. Even just loading up the machines with items took so much time and was so annoying to do. My dislike for the game is hard to describe, but I just found it more frustrating than I did enjoyable. Then we have Harvestella, which I have talked about a lot as well. This is going in A tier. This is a game that I initially thought was rubbish, and that's mainly because this has the slowest start of a game I have ever played. We're talking like the 5 to 10 hour mark before the game really starts to get going. The only thing stopping it from being in S tier was there were no cutscenes and no voice acting. If you don't know Harvestella, it's a farming sim mixed with an RPG, and both the combat and the farming are really rewarding. It's a pretty unique concept, and surprisingly the combination works well. Be prepared to have a really slow beginning. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, I think I'm going to put it in B tier. The game itself is so much fun. I love the story, especially the Titan storyline. I thought that was fantastic. I love the fact that it's open world and you can do everything in your own order. I also love the fact that there's kind of 3 things going on at once. You have the Titans, you have the gyms, and then you also have the star bases. I also love how they did the open world element with all the Pokemon appearing in the overworld. And I mostly love the fact that the Pokemon are the right size. The only annoying thing is when you're playing in handheld and some of these Pokemon seem to only be like 1 pixel big. And it comes as no surprise that the reason it's in B tier and not higher, despite the fun, is it is so buggy. I'm actually shocked we've had no update apart from the day 1 patch. All I can hope is maybe that it's coming when the DLC releases, but I don't have too much hope. Then we have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It's going in A tier. It's going. Despite the fact that it is just a port, I do love Mario Kart games. And the DLC courses, I personally think, have gotten better every single wave of release. Another game I've talked about a lot is Ori. That's going in A tier as well. Normally, I'm not the biggest fan of platformers, but Ori, with its storytelling and how adorable Ori is, really sold me. It's like a semi-open world platformer. You can kind of run around wherever you want to go, which I really liked. And although some areas can be really tricky, the controls make it so that you don't ever feel frustrated. and it feels really rewarding whenever you do make it. The same goes for Rayman Legends. I'm also putting this in A tier. Again, not a huge fan of platformers, but Rayman Legends is incredible and also my go-to to play whenever me and my dad are home alone. The 2-player mode is just hilarious, and there's such a wide array of levels. Not only do you have like standard typical platform levels, you also kind of have boss battles, which are a lot of fun. And you have music levels, which are my favorite. There's a bunch of mini games you can play as well, which are equally as fun. And genuinely, considering the sale price is on a lot of the time, you could pick this up for very cheap, and it is a very underrated game. Next is Katamari Reroll. I'm gonna put this in B tier. Again, you can pick this up on sale quite a lot of the time. It's basically a game where you roll a ball around, and as you pick up more items, the ball gets bigger and you can roll over bigger items. The game is absolutely wacky in the best sort of way. And the end of the levels are my favorite, when you literally can start rolling over dogs, humans, you name it, you can roll over it. The only reason I'm putting it in B tier and not A tier is sometimes I found the controls a little bit frustrating. But overall, I really enjoy it, and I think it's a great stress-relieving game. The same goes for Good Job. That's also going in B tier. It's a game all about destruction. How could you not love it? You basically get given a job to do, and you can choose to do this however you want. You can either do the job gracefully, or you can do the job chaotically and destroy everything in your path. As you do more and more jobs, you move up in the building and take on different jobs each time, making the game stay unique and also equally as wacky. I'm actually going to put Cozy Grove higher than I probably would have done a couple of months ago. And that's going in A tier. And that's for one big reason. It has been my go-to right now. It's the game I am playing the most, because in a time of turmoil in my life, it's giving me a daily routine and something to do each and every morning when I wake up before I get going with my day. I think especially when you're going through things in real life, having these little routines can really help you. That's what I found in lockdown with Animal Crossing, and right now that's what Cozy Grove is doing for me. It's kind of more life sim related than Animal Crossing is, and the focus is more on you doing tasks for the ghost bears than it is decorating or anything like that. And although mostly lighthearted, the game story can get really deep and emotional every now and again, and I think it's beautiful. Another game I've spoken about a lot, Persona 5 Royale. Now, I haven't finished this yet, but it's going in S tier. Now, although this is very heavy topic-wise, it is also fantastic. I feel like it's so hard to describe the game. It's kind of a turn-based RPG where it basically becomes your job to take down bad people, but in a totally different way. I've talked about it a lot in more detail before, but if you've never played a Persona game, this was my first one, and it was a great entry into the franchise. I've been loving it. The voice acting is incredible, the cutscenes are also phenomenal, and the story is so interesting. Next is Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. I think this got a bad rap. I really like the art style. I'm going to put it in B. This was better than Sword and Shield in some ways, worse in others. Like, I think I preferred the story of Diamond and Pearl, but also I preferred the open world sections of Sword and Shield. And although I love the story, it's not a game I ended up shiny hunting in that much though. Then we have Monster Hunter Stories 2. I am gonna put it in B tier. Incredibly underrated game. My first ever Monster Hunter game. And it's genuinely a lot of fun. For the most part, it's actually a pretty chill game. You just run around the world, finding dragon eggs, hatching dragons, and trying to get rare ones. At least that's what I spent a lot of my time doing. There's some pretty good online elements as well, and I really did enjoy the story. My only fault with it is it's one of those games where if you put it down and you forget about it for a while and you pick it back up, you have no idea what you're doing, and the only way to get back into the game is to restart the story. Okay, I left these three till last as they're my most recently played games. First up, we have Akka. Now, I know Akka has a bunch of bugs. They have already done a patch for the game to help it a lot of the way, but I'm actually going to put this in A tier. And that's because this is a £10 game. And for that money, you actually get quite a lot of gameplay and an absolutely breathtaking story. You play as a red panda named Akka, who has decided to live on this little island after the war has finished. And you spend your time helping the people and helping the land heal from the aftermath of the war. The game centers around relaxation, but one thing I definitely didn't expect is how hard-hitting the story can be. In the first 2 hours of me playing it, I cried a number of times because the story about how the war has impacted different characters was so touching. Don't get me wrong though, the game has so much cute character as well. I've enjoyed running around wearing a slipper for the entirety of the game, and despite its bugs, I have been thoroughly enjoying it. Then we have Dragon Quest Treasures. I'm going to put it in B tier for now, though I will admit I don't think I've played the game enough to really give a full review on it, but so far it is not what I expected, but in a good way. I thought the game was mostly going to be story and combat driven, and it turns out I was kind of wrong. Although there are strong story elements to the game, a large amount of your time is just spent running around with your little monsters following behind you looking for treasure. The part I really like though is that you personally don't have to engage in combat if you don't want to. You can literally just leave your monsters, do all the battling, and you can just run around looking for treasure. And it kind of surprised me how calming and relaxing the game is, as you can just mindlessly run around following the arrows for treasure, exploring at your own pace. And finally, we have Wavetail, which I'm also going to put in B tier. This first caught my eye as it kind of reminded me of Wind Waker, and it is incredibly unique. This is basically a 3D platformer, but the platforming aspects themselves isn't particularly hard, which I think is why I enjoyed it. In this game, the ocean is deadly, but after a series of events, you learn the ability to walk on it. Or rather, I should say glide. And it's up to you to push back this thing called the gloom. This is what makes the sea deadly, and you'll find it everywhere. And a lot of the game you'll spend trying to start up old machinery again. So far, even though I'm not the biggest platformer, it's been an awful lot of fun, although I'm not that far through yet. Those are my rankings on the Nintendo Switch. Let me know which ones you would say are S tier. And if you want to hear more about my favorite games on the Switch, click this link here. I'll see you next time. Bye.